Desync is a game with a lot of style. It knows what it wants to be and it achieves this, without a doubt. And although this genre doesn't appeal to me that much personally, I can still appreciate a fun arcade shooter. Set in what appears to be a Tron-esque computer program, Desync offers players your typical first-person shooter mechanics. However, whereas most mainstream, more realistic shooters focus on cover mechanics and firefights, Desync focuses instead on melee enemy combatants and dodging mechanics to offer a faster-paced action arcade FPS. It certainly makes you think on your feet. Enemies are relentless, and if you let your guard down even for a second, you'll end up taking a walloping. There's a lot of variation in the enemies too, which means you'll need to change up your playstyle in order to deal with the different attack combos you'll experience. Enemies appear during encounters, and there's multiple encounters on each level. Each encounter features a kind of arena-style play area in which the combat takes place. There's also boss levels where you'll encounter tougher, unique enemies who can undergo a number of evolutions with different attack repertoires each time. All of these places are connected by a centralized hub, where you can move between or replay levels, as well as choose and upgrade weapons, cores, sidearms, and attack sequences. Weapons act like you would expect, each having a primary and secondary fire. Upgrading your weapons isn't a straightforward process though, as increasing one stat like damage will decrease another like speed, so you have to make intelligent choices on how to modify weapons. Sidearms act as power-ups that can be picked up while on missions. There are a number of sidearms that do different things, like a shield that blocks attacks or a crossbow which can freeze enemies, but you can only pick up one type of sidearm at any given time. Cores are special modifiers which can be activated after filling up a core gauge. Such modifiers include health regeneration or increased knockback effects. And finally there's attack sequences. These denote special combos or actions that you can take in-game and result in certain outcomes as you play, such as increased movement speed or dash recharge speed. At the central hub you can also modify these with particular desyncs. Essentially they're debuffs that will affect certain enemies when that particular attack sequence is used on them. There's a lot of gameplay mechanics for players to sink their teeth into here, and that's a great thing. With so much variation and modifiers to try out, players will be able to replay levels to compete for the highest score. In this way, the game sets out to be an arcade shooter, and it does this extremely well. The controls are tight, the action is fast-paced and satisfying, and the music and visual aesthetic are upbeat and exciting. For me though, there were a couple of things that I felt were missing. I'm a sucker for a good story, so when I saw that Desync offers little to no story at all, I was definitely disappointed. For a game that markets itself as an arcade shooter though, I don't think this is necessarily a deal breaker. People who enjoy these games probably do so for the gameplay, and Desync has that in spades. The visual aesthetic of the game is also something that I think will divide a lot of people. Personally, I didn't mind the way the game looked, at least to begin with. After a while though, the strange purple world and the interlacing effect did start to wear thin. There is an option to limit the interfacing effect, which is nice to see, but over a longer playthrough the visual design starts to make the levels feel very similar, despite having different layouts. Desync gets a 7 out of 10 from me. Its fast-paced arcade action is incredibly addictive, and the game offers a number of ways to modify the action and keep things interesting. The lack of a story though, coupled with the monotonous feeling you get from the repetitive visuals, will be enough to turn some people, like me, off. That's okay though, because the game isn't trying to be anything other than a fun arcade shooter. Just make sure you opt in for the action, or else you might leave feeling disappointed.